probably important to understand a little bit of theory behind the concept of semiotics. Semiotics is a study of signs and symbols and their use or their interpretation, how we see things, and really how our perception goes through and figures those kinds of things out. It deals with the idea of signs, signs being made up of both a signifier and something that is being signified. And that might sound a little confusing, and I'm here hopefully to go through and clear that up a little bit for you. That way, as we go through and look at signs, signifiers, and signified. So I want to use, if you haven't figured it out by now, Google as kind of my theme through this to go through and do some type of analysis. Okay. So signifiers are a physical form of the sign itself, like the word Google, okay, or my even just saying Google, the sound that comes together to say the word Google, or the image of the word Google. And with that image, we have all kinds of things going on in terms of the color, in terms of the kind of font that's going on that's very specific to Google, that gets us to go through and recognize it in a number of different ways, okay? In terms of its logo, its Google Doodles, or even the building. If you think of Google, do you think of the campus of Google? I do. I've done some research on that to see what's going on. So that's the signifier. It's the physical aspect of whatever that sign might be. Here, again, the sign being the term Google. But what does it signify, or what does it mean? So there's a concept that the signifier refers to. And for Google, man, it's all kinds of things. The concepts could be to search, it could be to curate, it could be to go through and create, it could be to share, it could be to communicate, it could be to navigate, it could be to even explore. And in fact, it's even turned into a verb. Chances are you've done this, or you've been Googled. That's it goes. And that in and of itself has a couple of different meanings, okay? As we try to go through and figure out how signifiers and result in the signified, there is a meaning that's added in that process. And meaning really boils down to these two ideas, either denotative or connotative. I'm going to toggle back and forth between those. So you understand what they mean. I get into this in my introduction or my lower division communication classes, and I'm assuming perhaps you already have an idea, but let's do a little refresher here. The denotative meaning is the actual dictionary meaning, okay? So if you were to look up Google, you might find its denotative meaning as a company involved in online communication. And then you might go down a little farther and find other definitions for that, but that's probably what you'd come up with there, which really, other than us seeing the campus, we haven't really even talked about that denotative meaning as we've looked at those images. Okay, when we get into the signified, that's where we get into connotative meaning, especially when we've taken the word and we've turned it into something other than its proper noun. We've turned it into a verb there. So we'll talk about these two here a little bit later on, kind of test you on that a little bit. But let's get back to this idea of the signifier. There are three different types of signifiers. Remember, the signified is what they end up meaning, but the signifier leads us by the hand to that meaning. There's three different types. There are icons, and there are symbols, and then there are indexes. Okay, let's talk about icons. And Google's most famous icon. It's not quite this one, okay, but an icon has a physical resemblance to what is being signified, okay? So, like this one, okay? So there's a physical signifier here. This being signified means, in this instant, it means to look or to investigate or to search. And we know this is Google's search icon. Okay, that's an icon. Symbol's a little bit different. They're in fact the opposite of an icon in that it doesn't resemble the signifier that's being represented. Okay, Google Chrome, for example, and all the colors. We learn what that symbol means over time. All these come together once we have seen it on the bottom of our toolbar over and over and over again. If we happen to have Google Chrome loaded as our browser, then become symbolic to us, and eventually we don't have to go through and say, oh, scratch our heads and think, oh, what does that mean? I need to go through and look it up. No, we come to know that. You need to check out the crowd semiotics video that I've included in this module, and I'll put a link up to that at the end of this one, where somebody teaches an entire crowd certain signifiers. Okay, and with those signifiers, and they happen to be color, with those signifiers, they're able to go through and do a task all within just a couple of minutes. It's pretty fascinating to go through and see that. But those couple of minutes are significant in terms of people finding meaning with those symbols. Okay, it happens over time. It happens with culture. In fact, it happens within the contexts that we've been talking about. Okay. All right, so besides symbols, then the last signifier is this thing called indexes. Now, an index describes the physical connection between the signifier and the signified. Okay, the signifier being the Google logo, and the signified being all kinds of things here in terms of Google. Well, this means that the signifier can't exist without the presence of the signified. Okay, and Google does this with their Google Doodles. Okay, they couldn't exist without, in terms of what they're signifying, they couldn't exist without the signifier of Google, like this map, this metro map, or this one, or this one, or this one of my favorite ones, or my absolute most favorite one, this one. And if you're not a musician or don't know guitars, you wouldn't know that this is about Les Paul, who created one of the greatest guitars ever. What was fascinating about this particular Google Doodle in terms of being an indexer is that you were able to play it by taking your mouse. Each string here was a different note, and you were able to go through and play it. And you could record it by hitting the red icon there. It's pretty fascinating. And the sound it made sounded like a Gibson Les Paul. So that was pretty quick here. Let's do a little bit of a test and see how you do, okay, in terms of icons, symbols, and indexes. All right. So I'm going to bring up this. It's a screenshot of a Google search for the term semiotics. Okay. So my first question to you is this screenshot itself, is it an icon, a symbol, or an index? Okay, if you said index, you got it. It's an index since these search results could not exist without a Google search. Now you might be thinking, well, I could have done another search engine to come up with these, but it wouldn't look like this. Okay, so my second question, so what's signified with these results? What could you deduce from this? So if you thought that a person was searching for the term semiotics, again, you got it, because you see semiotics popping up in each one of those, right? Okay, which actually lends itself to the signifier. So what is a signifier? Good. So if you thought it's the combination of each blue heading of the results, then you're correct within that. Okay. Let's do one more little test here. This is the icon for Google+. So what is its denotative meaning? Well, I just told you. It's the logo for Google+. Google+, and you might not know this because it's not very popular, is a social media platform that is kind of serves the same objectives as Facebook does. Okay, that's the denotative meaning. So what would the connotative meaning of this be? Yeah, well, it didn't work very well. Nobody could really compete with Facebook. Might be the connotative meaning because Google Plus, even though they've attached it to absolutely every single Google product you use, like all the ones that you've seen pop up here within this presentation, regardless of those links, nobody's really ended up using it a whole lot. And so it ends up using it, using your input without your permission, really. Which is fascinating to me. That's something I could save later on for my new social media class. There's a shameless plug for you. Okay, so check out the video on crowdsourcing semiotics. I think you'll find it to be pretty cool. All right, talk to you later.